One more thing again. Let's talk to Michelle Montaine of WFAA to talk about what was happening inside the room. She was there. She was one of the 15 that got invited to hear from Nico Harrison, and let's learn anything we can about his opening remarks, about defense winning championships, about everything. Let's get into it with Michelle.
I'm here because I have to be.
Dallas is going to get a seat at the table.
That's it. It's me versus the machine.
Nice penetrating thrust to the middle.
People forget about fun.
Hot man, the hot player.
Wait. One more thing.
All right, we're here with Michelle Montaine from WFAA. She was one of the people in the room where it happened, was one of the few selected to join Nico Harrison in his secretive press conference. Michelle, set the scene for me. What did it look like? Where were you guys? Who was it look like a random press conference? We didn't get any pictures. There's no video. There's no audio of this thing. What was it like?
I guess it is kind of interesting when you put it like that. Like, I very clearly see exactly how it looked. And
it was probably boring.
And I realized that I guess the rest of the world who's just questioning everything has no idea what the look and feel is. It was just, think of your typical boardroom like that you'd see in any corporate office. I mean, it was in the stadium. It was, I think, on one of their suite levels at the American Airlines Center. And it was just a long boardroom table, rectangular boardroom table. Reporters kind of lined the entire, 8/10 of it. And then there were two seats at the head of the table where Nico sat and Rick sat. I think I counted, give or take, 15 media members in attendance. And then there were several of the PR staff in attendance. And then either one or two or a couple like audio/camera guys recording. So it was a well-lit room with windows. You could see outside. The sun was shining. They had croissants, like breakfast stuff out for us.
Wow.
Yeah, people got there early, and basically every media member was seated prior to the 10 a.m. start. They were prompt. We started right at 10 o'clock. Both Rick and Nico gave opening statements. I think Rick's lasted about 6-7 minutes, and then Nico gave his for about 4. And then, 10 minutes into it, they opened it up for questions. And to their credit, they answered about what I think I counted was about 50 questions from media over the span of the next 50 minutes. So it lasted in total 58 minutes, but was just about an hour of them fielding really any and every question. They didn't give us parameters on what we could or couldn't ask. They did request no live tweeting, but other than that, it was an open floor.
The no live tweeting thing was making everybody frustrated throughout the entire hour because they knew it was happening.
And it was, yeah.
And it is really throwing me right now, you saying talking about Rick Welts, the CEO, and not talking about Rick Carlisle, because we talked about Rick Carlisle for so long on this show in Mavericks circles. What was the point in their opening remarks? We've heard a lot of the questions that have been said, but their opening remarks, I think you mentioned it was about 10 or 11 minutes where they were giving their opening remarks. What was the main point that they were trying to get across in Nico and Rick's opening remarks? Yeah,
so Rick touched on a number of things. He opened with saying, look, I'm basically reflecting on my first 100 days at the Mavs. He did applaud Dallas, in general, for the overwhelming welcome that he's received. Said that fans really lived up to the reputation of people being just terrific and welcoming and warm and nice, it was ironic, I think, in that moment, kind of just given the nature of the point in having the press conference to begin with. He talked about how long he's known Nico. He's known him for over 20 years, was really excited to get to work with him. Said that he didn't really know much about or know Patrick Dumont very well prior to getting here and beginning to work with him. But he opened the conversation with the statement that they have seen between 75 and 80% of their season ticket members having already renewed their season tickets for next year. And that's with still 6 months to go until we start next season. But he acknowledged right off the top, I give credit to Rick Welts saying that doesn't mean that there isn't a portion of our fan base that feels alienated. We hear them, and it is on us to win their trust back. We have to do that. And we hear all of this noise all the time. we know that there's work to be done. And the way that they've kind of positioned this is that, like Rick saying right off the top, he said, in my 47 years in the NBA, and this is a guy who has been in every corner of this country with the National Basketball Association, he said he's never seen a more passionate fan base than this one. And his spin on that was like, that gives us a wonderful chance to win back those fans, and we are going to make that happen. Again, I have to reiterate, like, these are not my words. I am the messenger just relaying the conversation and the comments that were provided. But I will say this, Rick ended his little portion with, what he feels like what has been lost in coverage for them is a commitment from the team to build a new arena in Dallas. They're going to fulfill their American Airlines Center lease that runs through 2031. And then, they're hoping to have their arena site identified within this year to open in that 2031-32 season. So he emphasized the fact that they are trying really hard to find a place in Dallas before looking anywhere else in the Metroplex. That means within like Dallas city limits. And that kind of summarizes Rick's high points in his opening comments.
Did Nico have opening comments, or did he just kind of say, hey, we're here to talk about a stadium? And imagine there are some fan bases, their most frustrating thing ever has been like building a new stadium. Imagine that would be so nice.
Yeah. He did have opening remarks. He talked about, he kind of praised like getting the chance to work with Rick, talking about him taking leadership, to the highest levels and them reaching their business goals together. He did say, look, I'm going to address any trade questions you have and then really talk about the blueprint for how we're going to move forward. That was Nico's kind of opening sentiment. Now, I do want to touch on this because this kind of led the way into some conversations down the road within like the back half of the hour. He said, look, the team that I intended to have on the floor post-trade was a championship caliber team. And for 2.5 quarters, again, he opened with this. For 2.5 quarters, it was a dominant defensive team. He said that the philosophy that he built this team on was that defense is going to be our mainstay from here on out. I'm building this team on versatility and depth. And he said that starts the front lines with AD, PJ, Gaff, Lively, etc. Then he went into the fact that he feels really good about the roster's balance. And what I mean by that is he basically broke the roster as it's currently constructed into 3 categories. He said there's the group of guys who are our championship veterans. They're leading the way. Of course, that's Kyrie, Irving, Clay, Thompson, Anthony Davis, all guys who have an NBA championship to their name. He then said the next group of guys that they have are guys entering their prime. Think of Daniel Gafford. I think he put Najee Marshall in that mix. Yeah.
PJ.
Those are the guys. Yeah. I think he included PJ there, who are either in their prime or like entering their prime. And then there was, and clarification here, he gave an age group for that. He said guys kind of between like 26, 27, 28, 30. Yeah. As the guys kind of entering their prime. And then he said there's this young group, and that's your Derek Lively's, your Jaden Hardy's, your Max Christie's. Those are the guys who are still kind of young enough to where there's a lot more potential for growth there. And he said that based on that construction, he feels like they are balanced and poised to win. And that's basically his entire opening statement summed up and how he decided to lead the conversation.
He mentioned defense wins championships a lot. You said you have the transcript of how many times he said defense wins championships throughout the entire hour. How many times did he say that?
Well, I counted the defense wins championships 8 times from the time that the question started. So it didn't include his opening remarks. Yeah. I think he said it maybe once or twice in the opening remarks. And then he mentioned the word defense and like, we're going to be built on defense. Like that built on defense was another phrase that was used a number of times. This is all just from my own transcription that like I recorded because we were allowed to use a recording device to transcribe the conversation. We are not allowed to share that audio. Yeah. But that was a point of clarification going into the meeting because it was originally reported that there was no cameras, no recordings, no nothing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say it was like flirting with double-digit number of times used. And it felt like even more than that, to be honest.
Yeah, right. Well, when every question is being met by that, and even when you just talked about him talking about building the roster and starting with that, building on defense, and I get that. I kind of get his philosophy in building this team like this. I just think that there's a lot of other issues that we've gone over many, many times on this show about why this was all bad and the communication of it was bad, and like you saw Luka's response coming back to Dallas and all that. Today's episode of Locked On Mavs brought to you by Amazon. Amazon Fire Stick TV. Go check out an Amazon Fire Stick TV. I've enjoyed it. I've used it for a bunch of different things. You can obviously stream stuff on it. And right now you can also use it as an Xbox. Your Fire TV can be used as an Xbox. Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire Stick TV 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Ultimate Pass. With EA Play included, and you're ready to play, dive into hundreds of premium titles, EA Sports, College Football, Call of Duty, all that kind of stuff. You can do it right on your Fire Stick 4K device, which is awesome. 4K streaming, you can watch over 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services, Netflix, Prime, Disney Plus, Max, all that other kind of stuff. It's also better as like a affordable portable gaming. Play high quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. If you already have a console, a Fire Stick TV device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take yours or your kids' games wherever they plug in. So check it out. Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on selected devices, including Fire Stick TV 4K. Second generation Fire Stick 4K Max, first and second generation Fire TV Cube, third generation. Get one. Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On. Also brought to you by Skims. Skims, like the underwear that you're in. I'm wearing them right now. I'm telling you. When I found out that Skims was making underwear for men, I was intrigued. I heard so much about their quality from friends and family I had heard about, obviously their women's underwear. You see the Kim Kardashian commercials, and you see there's a bunch of them around Dallas. If you've seen the billboards of Skims ads, and you're like, man, I feel like I'm missing out. Those look comfortable. Now they make them for men too. I'm wearing them. They sent me a free pair, and I went and bought some myself. I tried them. They move with me, never lose their shape. They stay in place whether I'm working out or just running errands. The most comfortable and reliable underwear I've ever owned. I can read that copy that they sent and be very truthful about it because it is very true. I went and bought some more because I like them. Shop Skims Men's at skims.com/LockedOnNBA and Skims stores out the brick and mortar stores. Let them know that we sent you after you place your order on skims.com/LockedOnNBA. Select podcast in the survey. Select our show, Locked On Mavs, in the drop-down menu that follows. Skims.com/LockedOnNBA.
Shut it down! Let's go home!
You asked a question about misunderstanding the fans. What did you want to know from Nico from that question? What did you want him to answer?
Well, to be honest, the question verbatim was, what do you think is the biggest misunderstanding from fans about why this trade happened? And if you really think about the question, it's essentially, why did this trade happen? And why can't fans understand the why? You know what I mean? Because I think 2.5 months later, like that is still a question that fans are grappling with because they still don't understand why.
Yeah.
It's ironic that you led into this question with your previous comment because he said to me verbatim, I think fans' biggest misunderstanding is that defense wins championships. And, at a certain point, you're like, okay, let me, I'll pull up the exact, hold on.
The thing about the defense wins championships is that, yes, that's true. That's if you're a coach talking to a team, like we've got to play defense and be connected and be together.
Yeah.
I think that's the purpose of that quote. Championships in the NBA are won by stars. You have your Tim Duncans, you have your Kobe Bryants, you have your LeBron James, your Steph Currys. You look across the landscape and you have these stars, and you're like, all right, well, we just traded away that. And I wonder what was he trying to get fans to understand with the misunderstanding part?
Well, like the exact answer was, I think the biggest misunderstanding of why this trade happened is that we feel that defense wins championships. And I know once we're able to put this team on the floor, we're going to be able to compete for championships. To your point just now, like AD won a championship, yes. Kyrie won a championship, yes. They both did it with LeBron. Right. They don't win that without LeBron. Okay, in the Dallas version of that, Luka is the quote unquote LeBron. I'm not comparing the two. I'm not saying they're equal. I'm not going down that rabbit hole. I'm just
he was
saying
their one. He was their number one.
Yes, he was the facilitator. He was the offensive wizard. He was what the scoring ran through. And yes, he obviously got helped out by Kyrie in his skill set and AD in his skill set, no doubt. But to think that they could have done it without a LeBron, it's just, we don't know what we don't know. Like, who knows? This team could. And then we're all made to look a fool, and he gets the last laugh. But so far, since the trade took place, like, we haven't seen that. So
there were a lot of leaks about why they wanted to move on from Luka. Did he mention anything like that about Luka's conditioning, or did he get asked about anything about his injury history or anything like that? Because I think one of the interesting things about this whole thing is that he's not just betting on a player like Kyrie. He brought in Kyrie, and he said, well, I heard the quotes about him saying people didn't understand the Kyrie trade, and I was one of them that didn't get it. Then Kyrie got brought in, and he bet on Kyrie to be a good player. Now he's betting on Luka to not make it, to have injury history, or to have injury status and all that kind of stuff. Did he mention anything like that in this?
Yeah, he was asked explicitly. There had been reports that came out about Luka's work ethic, his conditioning. Like, was there anything specifically about him that you felt like wasn't evolving at a certain level that made you want to go a different direction? And he said, no. To his credit, he said, no, look, Luka is an incredibly talented player. We all know, as we've seen, he's probably dropped the most points when maybe he's not in the best condition. So he can do that. That's not an issue when you make a trade like this. He said that he was looking at the trade in its totality. And that was like, I felt like his answers would be answers just like that. Like, no, it wasn't Luka's conditioning. We've seen what he can do, and he's quote unquote like not in the best condition. But then we're looking at it in totality. Okay, can you expand upon what you mean by totality? And that's where it's just a little like, he went on to say, I felt like it was just the best interest of our team going forward. I keep saying this, but defense wins championships. I think this gives us the best opportunity to not only win, gives us the deepest team, the most versatile team, not only today, but going forward. I mean, that's it. That was his response. Like, it's at a certain point, like, he'll answer the question that was asked and then go back to that stock line of, the defensive side of things and what he values in terms of defense winning a championship and them being versatile and good at defense.
Do you think he believes that statement now? Do you know when you like say a word so many times it stops losing its meaning? Like, I wonder if he just says defense wins championships and it starts to sound like not words anymore.
I mean, I think he really believes it, but I think he also knows that, like, there's not much that he's going to say that people are going to be like, oh yeah, like, I totally agree with you.
Yeah. This press conference, at least everything that I've heard, justified to me that he has given his answer. Unless there's some kind of other answer that, I don't know, unless there's some kind of other conspiracy out there where, like, the NBA came to him and I saw the jersey numbers and I saw how Luka Doncic's jersey is selling for the Lakers, and unless the NBA came to him and he's just the fall guy for all this, unless that is out there somewhere, which I've held on to, like, hey, the more I hear crazy stuff about this, the more I may believe some of those conspiracies. But this is it. This is his justification. This is his answer, right? He's given it. And now I think a lot of us in media will be able to move on from asking questions because he's just giving the same answers on things. I don't know that we learned a lot of new things today.
No. And I think that we didn't. I mean, truthfully, I did think there were some pieces that stuck out to me more than others. Stuck out. Sorry.
Either way.
There were some times where the conversation got a little more heated, a little more agitated, and Nico just stays calm, cool, and collected. Like, he just maintains. And there were times, like, when the questions came off a little bit more, whatever, direct or fiery, or however you want to describe it, Nico would say, look, you're painting this all as a negative. Like, I choose to look at it as a positive. And, and he would kind of go on with his perspective. And I think that's what it comes down to. Is I was talking on WFA earlier today about Nico's response to the fans, like the chanting of the firing Nico, and like how he's taken that personally. And he's like, look, that tells me that we have a really passionate fan base in Dallas. And, whether these are genuine like beliefs or if it's just him trying to make things come off positively, we don't know the truth, but he continues to kind of beat a positive drum amidst all of the negativity that is swirling around this trade and this franchise.
Yeah, I don't think he has another option at this point, right?
Well, at some point you just wonder, like, is it better to just acknowledge and empathize a little bit more with the fans than what we've seen? Like, would that make them feel better? Who knows? Would that result in them showing up at more games? Who knows? At this point, he can't go back on the trade. I mean, he's standing firm in it, and he doubled down today. There were 2 lines that I led with earlier today. It is that he does not regret this trade.
Yeah.
He said, yep, I don't regret the trade. And he said, I believe in the trade that I made. So, I mean, that is what we got out of today. 2.5 months later, all this backlash later, that was where he stood.
And honestly, I kind of respect it at a certain level because Luka dropped 45 on his head in his building, the whole fan base calling for him to be fired, and he stands on it. You know what? At that point, okay, he's got to be right for him at this point, and I think he's got to stand on it. And here we are. So now it comes down to these like fundamental questions. Like Tim Cato posted this question that he asked about. He asked a question in response about Dirk's disapproval that longtime employees like Casey Smith had been let go by Nico, and what his obligation, what Nico's obligation was to fans and to the Mavericks. And Tim Cato wrote, Nico said, my obligation is to the Dallas Mavericks. It's what the best interest of the Dallas Mavericks, and that's the most important thing. Some of those decisions are going to be unpopular, maybe to Dirk, maybe to the fans, but my obligation is to the Dallas Mavericks. How does the obligation not be to fans at a certain point? What did you take from all that?
Well, I do think it's important to clarify earlier in the conversation, he was asked the first question about Dirk. He said, basically, this franchise their culture was originally built on Dirk Nowitzki, the guy with the statue outside. It's clear that he's made through various ways that he wasn't pleased with the direction that this franchise is going. Like, does that give you pause at all? And Nico's response to that was, let's be clear, Dirk Nowitzki is the most important person in this franchise's history. That's why he's immortalized outside. In terms of how he feels, that's a question for him. But Dirk is super important to this franchise. Any role, big or small, that he wants to play, he'll be met with open arms. Dirk is the greatest Mav ever. That was what Nico said at one point. Obviously, that was not a part of this tweet. And I understand why. Like, the question that Cato's referring to in that tweet was asked way later. And I just think it's important to say, like, at one point in the conversation, Nico did acknowledge how important Dirk Nowitzki is to the franchise. And I just want to be clear here because not everyone was in that room. So he did acknowledge that. To your direct question about like his kind of obligation, I think that's what you're talking about, the obligation to the fans. Yeah. I mean, you saw it there in plain text. My obligation is to the Dallas Mavericks. I think what I take from that is that, like, he's getting paid, right, by the Dallas Mavs. Like, that's his boss. And I truly believe that he thinks, like, if he can give the fans a winning product or a championship, I will say this. I think going into this trade, he felt like if I can give them a championship, that will relieve, like, any sort of backlash of trading Luka. And so in a way, it's like he thinks his obligation is to the franchise and winning for the franchise, the people that pay his bills. Now, I will say, I asked, do you think you underestimated how beloved Luka was? And his response to that was, I don't think there was underestimating, but we certainly know now how people feel about Luka. And that was, again, like, he's treading water so lightly because nothing he can say can be so wrong because he'll be roasted. Yeah. And he knows that. And so I don't think he can openly say, yeah, we underestimated how much people love him. Like, of course not. You're not going to say that. But for him to say, like, we know now, we certainly know now. Like, I don't know that anyone could have anticipated this. You know, like if you would have asked me, because it's so unfathomable. Okay, because the trade was so unfathomable, I think the reaction is also unfathomable. Like, I didn't expect caskets and funeral services and like all of the T-shirts and the boycotting and for it to take over medieval times. Like, I didn't expect that.
I heard it at a Stars game the other night, several times. Yeah. I could have predicted the backlash, just knowing this fan base and how beloved Luka has been, and like how entrenched he is in the culture, and the passing of Dirk to Luka, like that piece of it, I think is just so important in the connection that Mavericks fans have to Luka, because he is that last connection kind of to that pillar of Dirk, except for Dwight Powell, but he's the last connection to that pillar of Dirk. And that is just that. Anyway, that's it's like if LeBron had played with Kobe at the end. Like, imagine.
Do you think that, like, you thought it would? How does the reaction compare to what you expected? Like, right on par, more, less?
I think I would have expected more boycott things in a way, that there would be more boycotting. I guess I've also underestimated the amount of people that say that they're done with the Mavericks, and then now they're back in the comment sections and back listening to the show. And like, a lot of them say, I will never watch the Mavericks again, but I still watch shows, and they're still like invested in the Mavs sphere in some way, that they just can't get rid of it. Yeah. Or they can't like just, push it off. They were MFFLs, right? And then now some are saying we're Mavs fans for Luka. Now they're gone. But yeah, I think that, the protest was interesting, but it makes sense. Like, and I'm surprised we haven't seen more of them. But I guess they made that statement, and then the response in the arena when Luka returned, I thought was fair. I think the one thing I thought there would be more of, to be honest, and this is my last question to you, I thought there'd be more sell the team chants during that. And I know the Adelsons and Dumont weren't there during the Luka game, but I'm curious if there's any questions about the Dumonts or Adelsons, the owners' role in all this today.
There were I've talked about this all day for like 5 hours straight since it concluded.
You want to go live after this and like do more?
I'm going to. But I've thought about some of the things that were not misses, but like things that you think about after the fact, and you're like, oh, I wish I could have asked that. Because the Adelsons or Dumonts weren't in the room, like they weren't going to. You've seen it in some of the answers I've given you already. Like, they're not going to speak on behalf of anyone else. One of the initial questions was asked around like all of the Fire Nico chants. Why do you think that Patrick Dumont shouldn't take the fans up on that suggestion?
Yeah.
And that was when Nico answered with, this is a very passionate fan base in Dallas. They obviously love their team. Whatever I explained earlier, like, we want to give them a winning product built on defense, etc. But didn't address getting fired, obviously, head on. No one really asked more about their involvement with the trade, their approval of the trade. There were questions about the arena that were asked and how much like a casino friendly establishment is priority for getting this new arena site established and getting the new arena plans in place. But as far as the Adelsons or Dumonts specifically, like, they weren't really talked about from a questioning or an answering standpoint.
Interesting. That's a piece that I think hasn't been talked about enough. But,
yes.
But yeah, Michelle, WFA, all over the place, did a great stream on WFA Plus with your like instant reaction of all this, which I found fascinating, because you're like just thinking about this happened to be an hour ago and this is all. Let me just
now here it is.
Let me just blurt it all out. But yeah, you can find her on WFA everywhere. And yeah, guys, thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs.